There's a V5 of PostGraphile coming out, but I don't think anyone knows that. Or was I not supposed to tell anyone?
Yeah, I am working on PostGraphile version 5. For the first time in any of the open source that I've done, I'm actually doing it closed at the moment. It will be open source, like, ultimately. But I mentioned before that when I built PostGraphile version 4, it came out of like this 2-week hack project, and then it grew from that. And back then, I didn't have anywhere near as much in the way of like sponsorship or clients and things like that to fund development. So I didn't have the resources to then rewrite that initial like 2-week hack project into something that was properly architected. And one of the things that, we've heard a lot about over the last few years is like JavaScript fatigue, right? It's people releasing new major versions of a library every like 3 to 6 months because it adds this new feature in that. I've tried to avoid that. I don't think you want that on something that is so core to your architecture as PostGraphile, GraphQL Work, or anything like that. So broadly, I try and maintain backwards compatibility. But what I wanted to do with version 5 is I wanted to treat the last like 3.5 years as a research project. Like, what are all the problems that people have faced? What are the problems that I have faced whilst working with version 4? Like, why is it hard to add certain things, whereas it's easy to add others? And so with version 5, one of the things I've been trying to achieve is like a software engineered solution that has been designed and has actually like had time spent on it. And what this has meant is I've got like pages and pages and pages and pages of notes where I've been drafting out what I think is the right solution and then thinking through it and then going, no, this doesn't work. It contradicts that or whatever. And that was before I even started writing any of the code for it, which I started earlier this year. Then, of course, there's actually building a thing and iterating on that when you discover, when you're actually coding it, that there's more problems. And what this has involved is me building things and just then throwing away huge swathes of code, like thousands of lines of code, just going, no, that wasn't the right approach. Let's bin that off and start again and build it a better way. And if you kind of do that with open source, like, people can weigh in, which is fantastic, but also people start thinking, oh, I should use that. And they might start using it before it's ready, or worse, people start contributing to it. And then I'm like, I don't want to throw away this code anymore because it's not just my code. Like, someone spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours writing that, and I'm not comfortable now just throwing it away. I didn't want to have any of those restrictions at this point. I wanted the freedom to iterate and to research and to throw things away and rebuild them. And I've been doing that. And the result has been brilliant. I'm not really ready to tell you much about it yet. Hopefully, I'll be doing that early-ish next year. But yeah, it's coming along really, really well. And I'm really excited for it.
With this version 5, I know you talked a little bit about this earlier, but you have a GraphQL LLC in the UK. You're taking donations, and 1.5 days per week are now paid for this open source work, for this work on both maintenance of the existing system, but also, I assume, work on V5 here. How has that journey progressed from you just being pinged in an email thread, I assume, as an unpaid volunteer, to having actual funding for this and sort of working on this, I guess, at least 1.5 days a week, but I assume also a little bit more than that?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting progression. It's full of frustration because, like, the level of sponsorship I'm getting is great. Like, compared to many open source maintainers, like, it's quite a significant amount. And it is allowing me, like, you can see the libraries I'm releasing, you can see the contributions I'm making to, the GraphQL spec itself, which again is like volunteer based, right? So everything I do for the GraphQL spec, for the GraphQL working group is all like voluntary. I've released a whole bunch of other open source projects that have got quite big as well. And like doing that and trying to support all these businesses that are using it and all the users that are using it is a big responsibility. And having this sponsorship enables me to do that, which is fantastic. But the way I see it at the moment is like the sponsorship is enough to cover like maintenance. Like 1.5 days a week does maintenance and a little bit of software development. Whereas what I'm doing with version 5 is effectively like a grand rebuild of what I must admit is a really big project. Like, it you can't really underestimate just how much stuff PostGraphile does. There's huge amounts of stuff in there. That's quite ambitious. So yeah, you're right. I've been working a lot more than the 1.5 sponsored days. And I've been basically, I front-loaded a lot of client work this year so that towards the end of the year, I could spend a lot more time on the open source, which is why I'm finally spending a lot more time and advancing a lot quicker